I'm pleased to announce that we will now begin today's seminar entitled Science Policy Society Interface for the Ocean We Want, a Sustainable Ocean Economy for All. My name is Yoshiaki Mori from the Ocean Policy Research Institute of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. At the outset, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mitsutaku Makino, President of the Ocean Policy Research Institute, to deliver the opening remarks. Dr. Makino, may I invite you to take the floor?
Okay, dear distinguished participants, friends, and colleagues, very good afternoon. Thank you very much for participating in today's event entitled Science Policy Society Interface for the Ocean We Want, a Sustainable Ocean Economy for All. I am Mitsutaku Makino, President of the Ocean Policy Research Institute of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and also a professor at the Atmosphere and Ocean Research Institute of the University of Tokyo. As we face growing challenges in ocean sustainability, it is more and more important than ever to connect science, policy, and society. This seminar is a valuable opportunity for us to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and inspire action towards the healthier, more inclusive, and more sustainable ocean future. Let us make the most of this time together, listening, learning, and building new bridges across disciplines and communities. And today we are very lucky to have two distinguished guests, and they will be introduced later by Dr. Minako Iue. Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussions ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Makino, for your opening remarks. Next, we will have opening remarks from Chair and CEO Dr. Iue of Sailors for the Sea Japan, our co-host for today's event. Dr. Iue, may I invite you to take the floor?
Good afternoon, everybody. First, I'm very happy and so honored to be here, and I'm honored to co-host such an important sessions today. Thank you very much, Dr. Mitsutaku Makino and Ocean Policy Research Institute and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation and the University of Tokyo. Let me introduce two distinguished guests today. First, Mr. Charles Goddard. Charles Goddard is the Editorial Director, Economist Impact. Charles imagines and builds the Economist Group's flagship initiatives, the purpose of which is to catalyze progress on key issues of the day. He works closely with partners on themes including ocean health and sustainable ocean economy, and Anthropocene, global health security, and aging and longevity. Based in Sydney, Australia, Charles was previously Editorial Director, Asia, at the Economist Intelligence Unit, Director of Research in Asia, and Managing Director of the Economist Corporate Network, a peer network for senior executives. He is concurrently Executive Director of Economist Impact's World Ocean Initiative and Back to Blue, a joint initiative with the Nippon Foundation that is building pathways to zero pollution in the ocean by 2015. And I would like to introduce Dr. Jane Lubchenco. Dr. Jane Lubchenco is a marine ecologist and a university distinguished professor at Oregon State University. She served on the board directors for the United Nations National Science Foundation from 1996 to 2006. She was the U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and an administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and an inaugural member of the President Obama's science team from 2009 till 2013. From 2014 to 16, she was the first U.S. State Department science envoy for the ocean, serving as a science diplomat to China, Indonesia, South Africa, Mauritius, and the Seychelles. From 2021 to 25, she served as the Deputy Director of Climate and Environment within the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy during the Biden presidency. Dr. Lubchenco is one of the most highly cited ecologists globally, with 8 of her publications recognized as Science Citation Classics. She believes in using science and engaging society to craft solutions to society's biggest challenges. She has a distinguished history of collaborations with industry, communities, civil society, academia, and faith-based organizations to address climate change, reform fisheries, restore coastal habitats, and promote resilient communities. She believes we can harness science and creativity and work with nature to achieve healthy and resilient oceans, productive landscapes, vibrant communities, and people. She co-founded 3 organizations that train scientists, namely COMPAS, the Leopard Leadership Program, and Climate Central. She co-founded an integrated research monitoring outreach program called PISCO, the National Ocean Protection Coalition, and the MPA project, which seeks to advance smart use of effective marine protected area. She has served as the president of numerous professional scientific societies and multiple national commissions. Most recently, she co-chaired the expert group and then served as President Biden's delegate for the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, a pioneering partnership across 19 serving heads of state or government to harness science and action to protect the ocean effectively, produce from it sustainably, and prosper equitably. Dr. Lubchenco received a BA in biology from Colorado College, an MS in zoology from the University of Washington, and a PhD in ecology from Harvard University. Finally, she received 24 honorary doctoral degrees, including the recent Oxford University, and 81 distinguished awards, including Blue Planet Award in Japan before the imperial family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Iwe, for your opening remarks. Now we will have keynote lecture by the Honorable Dr. Jane Lubchenco. May I invite you to take the floor?
Thank you so much, Minako-san, and thank you, my deepest thanks to the Sasakawa Peace Foundation and the Ocean Policy Research Institute for the opportunity to join you today. Thanks also, Minako-san, for the invitation to visit Japan and to spend some time the last few days at the expo in Osaka. It was just phenomenal to see so many people coming to Japan and Japan sharing its culture with the world. I have worked at the science policy interface to the betterment of society for many, many years. I have learned many things. And I'm happy to share with you today a few of the things that I have learned. But I'm also here to listen and to learn from you, and I'm looking very much forward to the discussions that we will have. I believe, as a scientist, that science has a number of key roles in our society. As it relates to the science policy society interface, one of those key roles is to discover how the world works and is changing, and to use that information, to share that information, to inform decisions, not to dictate decisions of society, but to inform them. And those would be decisions that would be made by individuals as well as by institutions. Another key role of science is to help co-create solutions to many of the global challenges that we face today. So both to inform and to co-create solutions. And I'm going to focus on both of those today. I'll do so by acknowledging that we are in a world of disruption these days. We have political disruption, societal disruption, technological disruption, ecological disruption. And I believe that times of disruption are also times of opportunity. As regards to the ocean, I'm going to focus on some of these big challenges in the ocean, but also on new science-based solutions as being created and implemented through new science-based partnerships. And then I will conclude with suggesting to you that we are in the process of creating a new narrative about the ocean. So put on your masks and snorkels and let's dive in. There are indeed many threats to the ocean today that are presenting new challenges. These include some of the ones that are listed here on the screen: climate change and ocean acidification, the depletion and disruption of ocean ecosystems because of overfishing, but also because of plastic, toxic, nutrient, and I should add noise pollution, and also loss of biological diversity. All of those interact. They don't just have an effect on the ocean separately, they interact, and together they are making some very dramatic changes in ocean ecosystems around the world that present some very huge challenges for society. The good news is that there are many solutions at hand. All of these that are listed here exist today. They are simply not at the scale and pace that is needed to have the influence that we need them to have. There are ample opportunities for new solutions to be created through new technologies, new use of AI, for example, but we don't have to wait for those. We have solutions in hand. And I will say a little bit more about each one of these in the course of my remarks. I also want to talk about new partnerships. Oftentimes at the global level, when people are focusing on partnerships, it's through multilateral interactions and institutions, through the UN system, for example. But we're seeing the emergence of new coalitions, many multilateral, but more outside of the UN system through coalitions of the willing. The High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy is one such multilateral organization that is outside of the UN system that is demonstrating a lot of potential. The High-Level Panel represents 18 countries, and it's actually not the countries that belong, but the head of state or government, so the prime minister or the president of the country. The countries that are members are shown in the light blue here, and you can see that Japan is one of the members of the High-Level Panel. It has been from the outset in 2018. And these 18 countries are serious players on the world stage in terms of ocean and ocean action and commitment to ocean sustainability. Because these countries are geographically distributed and because they represent different economies, they have a lot of power. They have a lot of connections through their own neighborhoods, but also through other organizations in which they belong. Japan, for example, can bring ideas from the Ocean Panel to ASEAN or to APEC, for example. These the high-level panel, before deciding on what policies it would adopt and promote, decided to begin with science. And the members of the panel, the presidents and prime ministers, drew up a list of questions they had for scientists. I had the privilege of co-leading the expert group that they put together. And over a period of about 2 years, this group of over 350 experts from 54 countries delivered 19 different white papers that we called blue papers because they were about the ocean, as a way of providing a synthesis of the state of the science on different topics for these presidents and prime ministers. Food, the future of food from the sea, for example, or the future of energy, impacts of climate change on the ocean, illegal fishing, and many other topics. This science informing policy, science to inform, is a key hallmark of the Ocean Panel. And the heads of state and government, knowing what the science said, could then use it to decide what actions they wanted to take. All of these different blue papers were synthesized in a single document for the Ocean Panel that is depicted on this screen: Ocean Solutions that Benefit People, Nature, and the Economy. And based on all of that information, the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy made some bold commitments in 2020 when they announced what they were going to do with this new information. And each of the members of the panel signed off on these commitments and pledged to advance these commitments within their own waters, their own EEZs, exclusive economic zone, but also to work with one another to advance these internationally. The innovations of the Ocean Panel really revolve around the three commitments that they made to protect the ocean effectively, to produce from the ocean sustainably, and to prosper from the ocean equitably. And they joke about these as the 3 Ps: protect, produce, and prosper. This is important because it says that these are co-equal goals, and simply producing more is not the only goal. Simply prospering equitably is not the only goal. Protecting is not the only goal. They go hand in hand, and the commitments represent that. Based on the reason that they decided that this was actually viable was based on the scientific information. For example, the scientists calculated that we could produce as much as 6 times more sustainable seafood by 2050 if we, from both fisheries and aquaculture, if we were smarter about how we fish and farm. And the papers that were produced for the Ocean Panel describe how to do that. We could provide 40 times more renewable energy from the ocean, for example, by 2050. We could, I'll talk about that in a minute, 12 million new jobs by 2030. And so there's ample opportunity in the ocean for doing the kinds of things that the world needs to do: food to eat, energy to operate, jobs, but if they are done in a sustainable fashion. There were 74 total commitments that were made by each country in announcing these transformations. Some of those are listed here. We don't have time to go through all of them, but oceanpanel.org is the website, and you can find information about all of these on that website. And it's actually very energizing, especially given that many of the countries are actually in the process now of not just making those commitments, but implementing those commitments. And as we say in the US, the proof is in the pudding. And so making a commitment is just the beginning. Then you have to really deliver on that. Every time there has been a change in government from one within a country, so for example, when the high-level panel began in 2018, Prime Minister Abe was an inaugural member. And every change in prime minister, the new prime minister is invited, and in every case for Japan, the new prime minister has said, yes, I want to continue. So it is the hope of the Ocean Panel that your new prime minister, when they are decided, will also join the Ocean Panel. The second sort of non-traditional science-based partnership that I want to make sure that you are aware of is a different sort of beast, if you will. It is called CBOS, and CBOS stands for Seafood Businesses for Ocean Stewardship. CBOS represents the CEOs of 6 of the largest seafood companies in the world. 3 of those are Japanese companies. And this is a partnership not only among the CEOs, but between the CEOs and a group of scientists led by the Stockholm Resilience Center in Sweden. And the CEOs of these companies became concerned about the future of their business, given climate change, given the disruption that's underway, given the other challenges. And they wanted to take a long-term view and have science guide how they should think about the future. And in doing so, they realized they were actually part of the problem, and they needed to be part of the solution. And so they have committed to work together based on science to reform their practices and policies, to take a much longer view with the idea of having seafood far into the future, not just today. And so we have 2 new types of partnerships that add to the others that exist. And in both cases, Japan has been an active participant in those partnerships. I want to segue now to building on those earlier comments and use my thoughts about a new narrative for the ocean to describe how our attitudes and understanding of the ocean are changing. I focus on narratives because they're very powerful. They help us understand and interpret our world. They reflect what we think. They can frame our thinking, they can guide our actions, and they can either constrain or inspire us. And so narratives are important, oftentimes more often than we realize. I would suggest to you that maps are a type of narrative. And most of our maps of the ocean tell us this picture, that there are continents. This is a land-based focus, right? There are continents, people live on those, and the ocean basins between those continents separate us. So that is one narrative for the ocean that we have all grown up with. There is a very different narrative, but also accurate narrative of the ocean that is seen in this Spillhouse projection of the ocean. And this narrative tells a very different story. Let me orient you here. This is the North Pacific Ocean Basin. Here's Japan. You can see the rest of the coast of Asia here. Here's the Philippines. Here's Indonesia. Here is Australia, the Antarctic, Africa. Here we have the Arctic Ocean, Greenland. Here is Canada and North American coast, Central America, Mexico here, South America, down to the tip of South America. So we have the North Pacific Ocean Basin, South Pacific, Antarctic Ocean, et cetera, all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. That map tells a very different story, doesn't it? It says to us that, in fact, it's all one ocean. It's all connected. And that's why you will hear me use the word ocean in the singular, not oceans with an S to make it plural. And so this idea that the ocean connects us, not divides us, the ocean connects us, is very important. It also reminds us that what happens one place in the ocean affects other places in the ocean. And so this spillhouse projection I find to be both intriguing but also really important to keep in mind as we think about ocean and ocean sustainability. So our map of the ocean is evolving along with our knowledge, and I suggest to you that our narratives should also evolve along with knowledge. For most of human history, we have had one dominant narrative about the ocean. And that narrative says that the ocean is so immense, it's so endlessly bountiful, it must be infinitely resilient. People couldn't imagine that humans could actually alter the ocean. It was just impossible. We couldn't deplete it, we couldn't disrupt it, it was just there to be used. And people thought we could fish, we could drill, we could mine as much as we wanted because it was endless. We could dump as much as we want because dilution is the solution to pollution. That's what we thought. In short, this dominant narrative for most of human history has been the ocean is so vast, it's too big to fail. Now, there are people that still have that mindset. But in parallel to that, let me backtrack for just a minute. That thinking that the ocean was so vast and so bountiful was grounded in reality, because the ocean was incredibly clean, it was full of life, teeming with life, especially big fish, especially top predators like these sharks. And in truth, because we had limited technology for most of human history, most of the ocean was a de facto no-take area. It was a de facto fully protected marine protected area, a marine reserve. There was no fishing, there was no mining, there was no drilling in most of the ocean. And so things have changed dramatically. This too big to fail narrative, coupled with modern technology and the number of people on the planet, has led to very significant overexploitation and pollution. And all of these problems listed here are very serious, and as I mentioned before, they interact with one another. So this too big to fail narrative has triggered depletion of the ocean, especially top predators, pollution. The ocean is disrupted, it's warmed, it's deoxygenated, it's acidified, it is less resilient and less predictable because of all of those other things. And so we have inadvertently caused the challenges that we are dealing with today. Even though the folly of that too big to fail narrative is glaringly obvious, it does persist today, and that is partly because of ignorance about what is happening. It is also because there's the allure of new economic opportunities. So there's always some new horizon, new opportunity. We also have perverse incentives and lack of accountability and transparency. And in truth, a desperate need by some people for food, for resources, for development, for jobs. And it's a combination of all of these that is continuing to drive some of this degradation. This depletion and disruption threatens the people that are really doing the least to cause some of the problems. But it also affects the safety, security, culture, economic prosperity, and quality of life for everyone on this planet, not just people in coastal areas. And of course, it affects the well-being of life in the ocean. At the same time, we are demanding more and more from the ocean, with more marine transportation, more tourism, recreation, more needs for oil, gas, minerals, and more need for food. And so, in fact, because of this depletion and disruption, a new narrative about the ocean has arisen. That too big to fail narrative has now is being turned on its head, if you will, and people are saying, oh my gosh, the ocean is so massively disrupted. It is the vested interests that are driving that are too powerful. There are too many different problems. We simply can't deal with this. It is just too much. And so the too big to fail narrative in many people's minds is being replaced by a new narrative that says the ocean is too big to fix. Now that narrative is pretty much a downer. It has led to doom and gloom, lack of engagement, and lack of motivation. That's not what we need in the time of big challenges. However, despite these challenges, a third narrative is arising, grounded in science, grounded in action that is happening all around the world. And it's a narrative that puts the ocean at the very center of our future. This new narrative says that the ocean is so important to our future, it is too large and too central to ignore. This narrative is informed by science, it's powered by pioneering fishing people in coastal communities, by governments, by industry leaders, by youth. And this new narrative recognizes that the ocean is key to food security, it is key to climate solutions, it is key to economic prosperity, it is key to national security, and to equity and justice. And I don't have time to go into all of those, but a number of the blue papers that I mentioned from the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy do go into the science behind each of those, and I'm happy to say more about any of them. This third narrative is also firmly anchored in solutions that exist today. Reforming fisheries management so that we are fishing smarter, not harder, is really at the center of enabling the ocean to be in the center of the future of food security. And these are policy reforms led by fishermen, and they often involve rights-based fishery management. I'll tell you a story about one such fishery in the United States that has turned around dramatically. This is the West Coast groundfish fishery along the coast of Washington, Oregon, and California. It's one of our most important fisheries in the United States. It is a fishery complex with about 80 different species of fish, a lot of rockfish, lingcod, a number of other species. And it had long been a very vibrant fishery, employing lots and lots of fishermen, supporting coastal communities, providing wonderful seafood to so many people. But it had been significantly overfished, and in fact, it crashed quite dramatically, so much so that in the year 2000, it was declared a federal fishery disaster, and the entire fishery was closed. That was incredible economic hardship for those communities, for those fishermen, for their future. It was devastating. Some pioneering fishermen said, this isn't working for us. There's got to be a better way. And they teamed up with scientists in other parts of the United States, other fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico and New England, and they worked with fishery managers and with scientists and with non-governmental organizations to propose changes in the way that we manage fisheries. I was the administrator of NOAA. I was the head of NOAA at the time, and this was the crisis that we were dealing with. We were able to, with a lot of support, but still very, very difficult, make some significant changes in the fishery management to convert to a better way of managing our fisheries. The old way was a race to fish, where all the fishermen were competing with one another, and there was no incentive for conservation, because if I didn't catch the last fish than another fisherman would. And so intense race to fish with a downward spiral. The rights-based fishery management that we put in place changed the economic incentives to reward fishermen for conservation, to reward them for thinking long-term, not short-term, which they wanted to do anyway, but the economics was forcing them to do short-term. We put into place this new management, a catch share is what we called this rights-based program, a catch share management system in 2011, and almost immediately the fishery turned around. Many of the stocks that we thought would take decades to recovered much, much faster in the matter of years. We had a reduction in discards. We had 13 species of groundfish that were then certified by the Marine Stewardship Council. 40 species of them had gone from avoid to best choice or good alternative by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch card. So incredible success story led by this partnership between fishermen, courageous fishermen, and politicians, and scientists and NGOs working together for a better world. The story behind this incredible turnaround is now told in a book that's just out, just as of 2 weeks ago. It's called Sea Change, and it tells the story of one of those fishermen and his journey of discovery and empowerment. James Workman and Amanda Leland are the two authors of that book. Rights-based fishery management was not invented in the US, but we adopted it very successfully, and now more than 2/3 by volume of the fish caught in the US are caught under a rights-based management program. There are nearly 200 rights-based fisheries all over the world. Japan has some. And this type of fishery management is an example of what we call fishing smarter, not harder. And so I cite this today to emphasize that this is a proven solution. It's not a panacea, it doesn't work for all fisheries, but where it does work, it can be very powerful. So we have solutions. Another solution is tackling illegal fishing, IUU fishing, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, especially in the high seas, but not exclusively. And that has been a very significant challenge for decades. However, science and policy and new technology are changing that. We haven't ended it, but we have new tools that are making a huge difference. The Interpol, the International Police, made fisheries, illegal fishing, IUU fishing, an international crime. That was sort of the beginning. We had a new treaty, the Port State Measures Agreement, which Japan ratified earlier, a couple years ago, Minako, a couple years ago, 2018. So this international agreement has countries around the world working together, collaborating. The attention of the connection, the understanding of the connection between illegal fishing and slave labor and human trafficking was brought to light by some journalists. Ian Urbina is one of them. This was his book called The Outlaw Ocean. And we had a number of politicians in my country, John Kerry, John Podesta, and then this is Maria Damanaki, who, when I was the head of NOAA, she was the EU Commissioner for Fisheries and Maritime Affairs. And so there are people that have worked together on many of these policies. And then using AI and machine learning, Global Fishing Watch has pioneered ways to essentially use satellite information and tackle, see what the bad guys are doing on the ocean so that they can be apprehended and brought to justice. So a combination of a lot of things, and including the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, is making tackling of IUU fishing more feasible and is making significant inroads. Sustainable aquaculture is another tool in our toolbox, especially of low trophic level species. So the clams, the mussels, the oysters are particularly sustainable. There are ways to make other types of seafood sustainable, but a lot of attention to that is equally important. And the blue paper that you see on the left here, The Future of Food from the Sea, really goes through a lot of the information about aquaculture and what we know now from a scientific standpoint and from examples around the world about how to make it sustainable. The conclusion from that is that policy reforms and technological improvements could lead, again, up to 6 times as much seafood as today, and account for 12 to 25% of the estimated increase in meat that's needed to feed 9.8 billion people by 2050. Most of this increase in this number comes from shellfish mariculture. The fourth of 5 solutions that exist today that I want to highlight for you is creating protected areas in the ocean. Not just protected areas that are lightly protected, but protected areas that are fully protected from extractive or destructive activities. They've been around for a long time. We know that they are a powerful technique. It's been very difficult to implement them at scale. When I first started working on marine protected areas, it was in the 1990s, and at the time there was 0.01% of the ocean that had fully protected marine protected areas, 0.01%. Today, it's changed a lot. We've gotten up to about 3% of the ocean as fully protected. About 8 to 9% has some kind of protection. And what the science tells us is that if we want the benefits of marine protected areas, the stronger the protection, the more the benefits. This is an example of some of the scientific papers that have been written on the science of marine reserves, which is another term for fully protected marine protected areas. And this figure summarizes some of what we have learned. When you create a fully protected area, biodiversity recovers within that area. It can recover, some species recover very rapidly, others recover more slowly. But inside that protected area is immense biodiversity benefit, and that biodiversity is incredibly important to the future of the ocean. But marine protected areas do more than protect biodiversity. The bounty in those protected areas spills out to adjacent areas outside and can help recover depleted fisheries outside the protected area. Fishermen know this because when they fish around a protected area, they're fishing right along the line of the border. We call it fishing the line. And that's where the spillover is happening, and so that's where the big catches are. So that spillover is important. The other important thing about marine protected areas is that they allow the fish or the invertebrates to get really big. And in many cases, the number of young that are produced scales by volume. And so the bigger the fish, or the bigger the crab, or the bigger the shrimp, it's not just a few more young that are produced, but lots more young, and those are exported outside the area, sometimes great distances. So the export of larvae is critically important. We also know that protected areas are important in enabling marine communities to be more resilient in the face of, for example, warmer waters because of climate change. So for all of these reasons, we are learning how important protected areas are. And yet there still is a lot of hesitancy around them. They're challenging from a social standpoint, but the benefits are crystal clear from both the ecological as well as economic benefits. The evidence is very, very powerful. Most protected areas that exist today are within the EEZs of countries. Because the high seas, the international waters, represent 2/3 of the ocean, That's been a huge challenge because nobody is really in charge out there, and so the destruction has oftentimes been even greater. We now have, finally, after decades of negotiation, a new international treaty. It's called the High Seas Treaty, also called BBNJ for Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction. And that new treaty, after being open for signature for only 1 year, as of September, was signed by enough countries that it will now become operational in January. Japan has signed but not yet ratified BBNJ, the High Seas Treaty. So there is an opportunity for Japan to join the global community and to have a voice in the conference of the parties that will be held to decide, okay, how are we going to implement this treaty? So being at the table is really important if you want to be a party to the decisions that are being made. 145 countries have signed, 75 have now ratified. And so this is actually a very good news opportunity. I forgot I had this slide in here, and I'm so glad I put it here. So I was telling you how bigger fish make more young. This will give you a good example. This red fish is a vermilion rockfish. This is common off my coast of Oregon. Here's a red rockfish that, this is in inches. So this is about 15 inches long. This red rockfish that's that size produces 150,000 young. But if you let this 14-incher grow to 24 inches, it produces 1.7 million young. So a little bit bigger size means lots more babies, and that's what we need to replenish the ocean. The Marine Protected Area Guide, MPA Guide, is a scientific guide that was published in Science magazine 4 years ago now, that provides a guide to understanding the science behind what outcomes you get for different levels of protection. So another good resource that I highly recommend to you. And this was the image that was in the science paper that talks about what the past, on the far left here, my pointer is not very dark here. So in the past, we had a very bountiful ocean, lots of diversity, lots of biomass. This is what it's like today, and this is scientifically accurate in terms of the relative diversity and abundance. For our future, we have choices. We have different possible futures. If we have fully protected, marine protected areas, we can restore the bounty that was in the past. We have highly protected, which does almost the same. Lightly and minimally protected does better than nothing, but not as much as we need. So that's a visual graphic depiction of some of the opportunities, the choices that we have before us. The high seas, I mentioned half of the ocean, two-thirds of the ocean surface, half of the global surface. And you see here BBNJ and how important it is for it to be operational. So I've summarized for you four different solutions. I want to talk finally about the power of the ocean to tackle climate change. And this, again, is another report from the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy, which really flipped the script for people and said the ocean is not just a victim of climate change, it's a powerful source of solutions to climate change. And it provided the evidence for how much reduction of emissions we could get from different things that were ocean-related. And you see here some of the different things that were analyzed. And the bottom line is that ocean-based renewable energy, so this is green shipping, ocean-based transport, and blue carbon ecosystems are the ones that have the most power. And if you add all of these up, including carbon storage on the seabed and fisheries, aquaculture, dietary shifts to have more seafood as opposed to land-based protein, we get as much as, this was an early graphic, 21%. They've redone the numbers recently, and it's now 35% of the greenhouse gas emission reductions we need to get to the 1.5 Paris Agreement. So the ocean is a very powerful source of solutions to climate change. And now, in addition to talking about carbon emission reductions, we know we have to also remove carbon from the atmosphere. One way to do that is to remove it from the ocean, and then the ocean removes it from the atmosphere. So marine carbon dioxide removal is another opportunity to tap the power of the ocean to solve climate change. When I was in the White House in the last 4 years, we produced the world's first ever climate ocean action plan. This was for the United States. Other countries have done this, but this is an opportunity for a country to take stock of what are our opportunities to use the ocean to reduce our emissions. And that report guided what we are doing in a very powerful way. So 5 solutions I presented that are underway now. They could be scaled. They need to be scaled. We have the science behind them. And we can invent more kinds of solutions. So we don't have to stop with what we have. More can be invented, but we don't have to wait for those new ones. We can use what we have. So all of this is telling me that the ocean may not be too big to fix. We have the science, we have the solutions, we have new innovative partners like the ones that I've described to you, the Ocean Panel and CBOS, and our hope is that all of that can come together and recover the bounty of the ocean and use it wisely. So this is an example of the science, policy, society interface to create the ocean that we want. And I think there are reasons for hope. There is new science, there's new awareness. We need more awareness. We need each of you to be talking about these issues and sharing information so that others are learning. We have new thinking, we have new innovative technologies and partnerships. We also have powerful solutions that already exist, but they're not at the scale that we need. And so we need to figure out how to scale those up. Individuals can do a lot, institutions can do a lot, and so it depends on sort of what your interest and appetite and opportunities are, but being informed and engaged, I think, is probably the most important. I think all of this is leaving me with a sense of agency, of urgency, and hope. And I believe that now is the time to replicate, accelerate, and escalate existing successes while also driving innovative and transformative changes. I believe it is possible to use the ocean without using it up. And we've talked about new challenges, new solutions, new partnerships, and a new narrative. We talked about a new way of using a map to tell a story of a narrative. And the ocean, this one ocean, the map tells us, sustains and feeds us. It connects us. It's our past and our future. And I think it's time for a new narrative that says the ocean is not too big to fail. We've learned that. Nor is it too big to fix. But it is too big and too important, too central to our future to ignore. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lubchenco, for your comprehensive and insightful lecture. I'm sure that you have a number of questions or comments. However, please allow us to move on to the next panel discussion and have Q&A sessions all together thereafter. I invite the panelists to come up to the stage. From now, so please come up to the stage. Okay, from now, I will hand over the floor to Dr. Makino to moderate the panel discussion. So please.
Thank you very much. Now it's a very enjoyable time has come, panel discussions. Today we have 4 panelists on the podium, and we are very happy to have them. And yes, first of all, Professor Lubchenco, thank you very much for your inspiring talk, lectures. I've learned a lot. Starting from the basic concept and new initiatives such as the high-level panel or CBOS. Also, she taught me the huge opportunities lying in ocean as a solution to the climate change. Also, one of the very striking and powerful message was the changes of ocean narratives from too big to fail to too big to fix, and we should go to the too central and too large to ignore. This is very powerful. Also, I was impressed by a lot of beautiful photos, and some of them are very shocking, but yeah, photos or images are also very powerful narratives to change our mindsets. Thank you very much. Now, having the lectures from Professor Lubchenco, I would like to introduce the panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Charles Goddard, editorial director of The Economist Impacts. Now, he is going to give us a short presentation about climate and the ocean and the transition to sustainable ocean economy. Mr. Goddard, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Mikino. It's lovely to be here, and thank you very much for supporting me to be here as well. It really is a great pleasure. I urge all of you, firstly, to take a great deal of interest and urge you to reflect on everything that Jane said. I'm going to try not to repeat too much of it, but inevitably there's going to be some things that I say that are going to be repeating what Jane says. But do please pay a lot of attention to what Jane has said. I think a lot of us in the ocean community deeply agree with most of what Jane, pretty much all of what Jane has said. I'm just going to say a few words about the blue economy and the sustainable ocean economy. I've only got 5 minutes, so I'll try and just summarize my thoughts as quickly as I can. This sustainable ocean economy, the blue economy as it's sometimes called, and Jane and I were talking about this earlier, quite often we now like to refer to this as the sustainable ocean economy rather than the blue economy. So we do use the word sustainable. We do think about what it means to be sustainable in the ocean. The way that I've defined it generally, and I've taken that liberty of taking other people's definitions, but I find it simply as, where human activities are in balance with the long-term capacity of the ocean to remain resilient and in robust health, which is absolutely vital, it seems to me. So we've had an ocean economy for millennia. Of course, we've been fishing, we've been going around the ocean in boats, we have towns, cities, villages on the ocean, on the coast. And of course, most recently, as Jane was saying, we have a highly industrialized ocean in which we have industrial shipping, we have ports, we have infrastructure in and around the ocean, we have pipelines that have been laid in the ocean, we have renewable energy, we have industrial fishing and industrial scale aquaculture, when we have tourism, we have all of these major industries that are an important part of the ocean economy. When I began the World Ocean Summit, which came to Japan this year in 2025, in 2012, a lot of the discussion about the ocean was really about how that economy was going to grow. Our intention when we started that process was to really examine how the ocean economy might be able to grow more sustainably and to really unpick the complexities of trying to do that. And I think I will start really by emphasizing that since 2012, when we first started working in the ocean, and of course the sustainable ocean economy was in its early days of being defined and to some degree implemented, since we began, I think there's been a lot of progress around the sustainable ocean economy. On the governance side, on the public sector side, there's been a great deal of effort to drive conversations, drive and implement actions around marine spatial planning, all sorts of area-based management of the ocean, better governance of the ocean, connecting parts of governments together to try to understand how better to navigate a sustainable ocean economy. As much as there has been too now a plethora of new national ocean action plans, many of which have been started by the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, but also many other countries, the European Union, Japan, well, Japan is part of the high-level panel, but many others are also now engaging in this process. And there is an effort to try to get 100% of all countries that have ocean spaces to have ocean plans by 2030. I'm not sure we're going to reach that, but it's a very good goal. And we have a lot of international agreements, as Jane mentioned, the Global Biodiversity Framework, the 30 by 30 framework, where we have to get 30% of the ocean protected by 2030. All of these things are enormous steps forward in the governance of the ocean. On the private sector side, I would argue that there's also been some progress being made. CBOS is one of those areas that Jane mentioned, but there has been a growing engagement of private sector companies in the ocean space. And of course, part of that, and growing engagement too, of the financial services sector in the ocean space, which is important because a lot of capital that flows through to companies that have activities in the ocean comes from the financial services sector. And there are tremendous opportunities as well for developing and transitioning to a sustainable ocean economy. And I'm not going to repeat all of those because Jane, I think, really, in a really detailed and really interesting way, presented all of many of those opportunities. So there's a tremendous amount happening. If all of that has happened in the last 10 to 15 years, just imagine now what can happen in the next 15 years, 10 to 15 years. But, and I think there is a really big but here. This progress that we are seeing and we're talking about today is overshadowed in many ways by growing and accelerating human impacts on the oceans, impacts from our economic activities, both in the ocean itself and on land. And I think, whether it's pollution from land, 80% of the ocean pollution comes from land, whether it's the growing extraction of ocean resources, the growing number of activities in the ocean, whether it's the impacts, as Jane said, of climate change on the ocean, all of these things are serving to undermine the health of the ocean. And I'll just make a couple of remarks to finalize, just link this issue of climate change, and again, which I see as being possibly the most urgent issue that the ocean faces, that we are now in a period where, and there was a report that just came out today, interestingly enough, from the University of Exeter that said that we had probably reached and passed the first global tipping point with the death and the mortality, the widespread death and mortality of warm water coral reefs. Now, of course, there's a lot of debate about tipping points and a lot of debate about planetary boundaries, but that simple fact, that impact of climate change on the ocean is going to have a direct impact, not just on ocean health, of course, which is deeply worrying, and on the health of Earth systems, but on our economies as well. As Jane was mentioning, we survive because of the ocean in so many ways, but our economies are deeply dependent on the ocean. The livelihoods of hundreds of millions of people are dependent on the ocean. This crossover between the impacts of this very, very serious climate problem that we have and the health of the ocean is driving and accelerating further economic challenges that we now face with the ocean. So it's accelerating industrialization of the ocean plus accelerating impacts from climate change, nature loss, which is also largely influenced by climate change, and are polluting the oceans, that is, undermining all of the efforts that we're making to really try to drive a positive change and make a transition to the sustainable ocean economy. So that would be my thought.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the latest information about the tipping point of the coral reef, just published today. Yeah, I didn't know that. Thank you very much. Okay, next I would like to invite Dr. Minako Iue, Sailors for the Sea Japan, and she's going to give us a short talk about the Japan's role and expectations in addressing IUU fishing and the beyond. This is also the very important topic in Jane's lectures. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As Dr. Lubchenco just told us that the IUU fishing is fair. Approximately 26 million tons of seafood are caught annually through IUU fishing worldwide, with an economic value of 1 to 3 trillion Japanese yen, equivalent to or even greater than Japan's total annual fisheries production. It is estimated that 1 out of every 5 or 6 fish we eat may originate from IUU fishing. Because IUU fishing directly violates the rules designed to prevent such overexploitation, it not only threatens sustainability but also undermines the credibility of scientific stock assessments, which are essential for responsible fisheries management. Sustainable Development Goals 14.4 calls on nations to end IUU fishing by 2020. However, the world is still far from achieving this target. As the world's third largest seafood importer after the EU and the United States, Japan enacted in 2022 the Act of Ensuring the Proper Domestic Distribution of Specified Aquatic Animals and Plants, long name, but commonly known as the Proper Distribution Act or Anti-IUU Act, to prevent IUU-delivered seafood from entering the domestic market. Under this law, importers of 4 species, squid, mackerel, Pacific sorry, and sardine, are now required to submit valid catch certificates. As of 2025, when combined with tuna species already controlled under the Foreign Exchange and Foreign Trade Act, roughly 30% of Japan's seafood imports by volume are now covered by Japan's IUU import control framework. However, these measures alone are not yet sufficient. The European Union has already made catch certification mandatory for all fish species, and next year it will introduce a new technology-driven system called CATCH to further strengthen traceability. And the United States, through its Seafood Import Monitoring Program called SIMP, currently covers 13 key species. As a result, seafood products derived from IUU fishing that have been barred from entering these major importing markets are said to be flowing instead into Japan's market, where regulations remain weak. In 2024, the Fisheries Agency for Japan convened an expert committee to consider expanding the scope to include shark and shrimps, and to digitize the reporting and certification system. And then the next meeting of Fisheries Agency, scheduled for 2026, aims to develop a comprehensive roadmap to eradicate IUU fishing, focusing on 3 pillars. 1, expanding the range of target species. 2, advancing digitization. And 3, strengthening coordinating among major global seafood markets. At the same time, the global community has now begun to unite in the effort to eradicate IUU fishing. The IUU Fishing Action Alliance, led by the United Kingdom, Canada, and United States. that brings together governments from around the world, 38 member countries, which is 11 countries plus EU countries at the moment, along with 14 supporters, non-governmental organizations, including us, that have joined and are actively cooperating in this initiative. The Alliance shares the pledge metrics and holds regular deep dive sessions to discuss and design innovative solutions for the future. In June this year, at the United Nations Oceans Conference held in Nice, we hosted an official side event where participating countries shared their current situations and progress on this issue. Although Japan has not yet joined this alliance, it has already ratified the Port State Measures Agreement, as just Dr. Lubchenco marked, and passed the BBNJ agreement through the National Diet. Therefore, Japan is expected to play an even greater role in strengthening international frameworks to combat IUU fishing and to contribute to a sustainable and transparent future for the global fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minako-san. And actually, fishery is a very big part of the ocean economy, especially in Japan and in Asian countries. So the IUU is huge, and it's a big economic loss, as well as, as you pointed out, it is the source of large uncertainties in ocean science activities, including the stock assessment. So, yeah, this is a very important topic, so we will be back to this point later. Okay, now I would like to invite our third panelist, Dr. Kotaro Tanaka, a research fellow of OPRI. So he's going to tell us a perspective on Japan's landscape on UN Ocean Decade. Kotaro, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Makino-san. As he introduced, I'm going to a bit talk about the UN Ocean Decade because under the name of Science Policy Society Interface, the UN Ocean Decade itself is pretty much one of the key global framework besides high-level panel and CBOS that Professor Jane just introduced to us. And two, OPRI is working as one of the secretariats of Japan National Decade Committee that I will be talking in the later part of my intervention. So very brief recap of the UN Ocean Decade. The UN Ocean Decade started at 2021. That is a global framework aiming at facilitate the collaboration between relevant stakeholders under the name of this Science Policy Society Interface. It provides several platforms for conference and forums and other materials, reports, and so on. One of those pillars is called Decade Action. So the Ocean Science Committee will apply and be endorsed by IOC UNESCO if their project, if their activity is well aligned with the vision of the ocean, with the ocean science, the Ocean Decade. So far from Japan, 21 decade actions are officially endorsed from IOC UNESCO. Those actions are pretty much diverse. It ranges from ocean observation, ocean forecast and prediction, to ocean education and literacy, to underwater heritage, to other very ground level working. So I am currently working on interviewing the principal investigator about the benefits of being endorsed by these dedicated actions, and many of them told me that they got more international collaboration, they got more international presence after being endorsed by these decade actions. So this is pretty much good doors for them to enter into this international forum. Also, Japanese Ocean Science Committee is actively working on, for example, convening symposiums and events to raise public awareness towards this ocean science and the UN Ocean Decade. And also, they published several reports and other publications, including Encyclopedia of the Ocean Science, and also Japan's initiatives for UN Ocean Decade. I believe those are also very good. Reach out to the general public to push the boundary of this ocean science. Another key component is, like I just mentioned, the National Decade Committee. This is a forum where these science policy society interface is actually happening. We invite many members from different fields. I showed the numbers here. We invited 9 members from ministries, 9 from academia, and also we invite members from philanthropies and the private sector. So I believe this NDC is playing very much important role to make things happen under the name of this science policy interface, and they are sharing their activities, and they are also sharing the challenges they are currently facing. What I want to do here is showcasing the challenges identified by National Decade Committee and the members of the National Decade Committee on the table of this discussion, because I believe I want to just throw these challenges as a seed of the discussion in the following panel discussion. I'd love to hear the perspective of our distinguished panelists, our distinguished speakers about those topics. One is, although Professor Jane and Charles already mentioned, the interaction with industries, how we can expand this conventional ocean science scenery towards the industries, how ocean scientists can be harnessed with the industrial or business activity, and vice versa, how we can harness industries into this ocean science field. The second is strategic communication. Professor Jane stressed this importance of narrative, but say, for example, if we want to harness industries, what kind of narrative we really use, what kind of narrative we need to reach out to those people. And even though Ocean Decade itself is a global activity, we need to customize this framework, customize this narrative into the national level to make things happen. So I'm pretty much keen for listening for the discussion about the strategic communication. And lastly, as one of the ECOPS member, RE Carrier OSHA professional member, I love to hear about how to support ECOPS, especially in the very juncture of science policy society interface. With that, I stop my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Kotaro-san. Right, very good talks from 3 panelists. And now I would like to start the panel discussions, starting with the question raised by Tanaka-san. The question is going to Professor Lubchenco and Mr. Goddard. Yeah, especially in Japan, we are now trying to establish more close collaboration and co-creation of knowledge with industries. And in your lecture, Professor Lubchenco, you showed us a good practice such as Pacific groundfish resource management as a successful case of the collaboration with the industries. But we know that it's not easy, not so easy. So could you share with us your experiences on what is the tip of collaboration with the industry, or what is the difficulties, or what is the joy of working together with them, please?
So I think that any type of collaboration needs to have something for both partners. Industry has to see something that's in it for them, and scientists have to see something that's in it for them. And so it's finding that common ground, that sweet spot, that is the real opportunity. The high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy also had a series of advisors from industry, from NGO, from philanthropy. And they suggested starting a number of action coalitions around different topics. One of those action coalitions that has been very successful is called 1,000 Ocean Startups. And this really focused on the opportunity in the ocean for new startup enterprises. And those 1,000 ocean startups are taking off and are doing amazing things different places around the world. So finding that common ground and unleashing the creativity within industry and scientists is really the secret. And that need not be the really big industries. It can be a startup as well. So both of those are important. From the standpoint of many companies that do technology, the ocean is a phenomenal opportunity to create new ways of sensing what's happening in the ocean so that we can understand more how currents are changing, how the ocean is changing, and guide everything from fishing to ocean energy to shipping. And so there are just endless opportunities in the ocean. Many people look to the ocean for inspiration, for new ideas. And because there's so many creatures in the ocean that are different from on land, they have invented through evolution amazing structures that are informing, how, for example, the glues that barnacles and mussels use to anchor themselves to the rock on a rocky coast where the waves are crashing is now used in the dental industry to have glues that can set in a very wet environment, your mouth, and to do good dentistry. So the ocean is really a source of inspiration for new industries and new opportunities.
Great talk. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to ask Charles-san. You are the editor of the economic impact. So, from your viewpoint, what is the reaction to Jane's comment, and what is your perspectives on this?
I'm always going to find it difficult to add too much to Jane's comments, but let me try and add 2 or 3 things. One, there's always been collaboration between industry and science on the ocean. That's a fact. Every major industry that's in the ocean has come to a large degree from the science process. The issue before us now is how do science and industry, and indeed policymakers who influence some of that process, collaborate around the transition to a sustainable ocean economy. And Jane has mentioned many of those connections already, and I won't repeat them now. That's one thought. The second thought is that industry and the financial services sector do now need clear science, evidence, clear data in order to be able to take action around the transition. And in particular, we've been having conversations, particularly with the financial services sector. One of the great challenges that they face when they try to build guidelines, build principles, adhere to new mechanisms like the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, is that they don't have the requisite science and data to be able to take the requisite decisions and actions on that. So there is a really important piece for science and industry and financial services, and indeed policymakers who make the guidelines so often, or make the framing of this need for the transition, for them to all work together around this. Jane has already mentioned all of the innovation that's needed, the science collaboration with industry around innovation, so I won't go into that. I would just say one more thing, and that is that, in a sense, we are, because of climate change and the global impacts, the impacts on a global ocean of climate change, and indeed the further impacts thereby on nature loss in the ocean, we are now going to have to think about an additional framing for the way in which we govern the ocean. We're going to need to think, and Jane was alluding to this many times and even mentioned it, I think, we're going to have to think about the systemic management of the ocean at a planetary scale. We are going to have to think about not just national, local, and regional ocean governance and management. We're going to have to sort of embed principles of resilience, dynamic adaptation, which is a new concept that's arising for much of this discussion around climate risk mitigation, and indeed, to some degree, the maintenance of planetary boundaries around the ocean as new framings for the way in which we govern the ocean. How we do that is another question. We haven't yet worked out completely how to do that, though there are mechanisms in the BBNJ and other treaties to try to address some of these issues. But how we build science into that process, how we connect that process to industry and to global governance is going to be critical.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you clarify the role of the science. For example, the planetary scale, knowledge or data that is something exactly the science should do. In science, basically we have no boundary, no national boundary. We are all, and we have only one ocean on Earth. So international collaboration for that is critically important. Yes, thank you very much. And now I would like to talk a little bit more concrete example of the ocean activities, ocean economies. It is fisheries. In Japan, fisheries is a very important part of the daily life and a very important part of the ocean economy. And as EUA-san pointed out, we have, at the same time, we are facing the issues of large-scale IUUs, and it is cause of the waste of the economy and also the source of the scientific uncertainty. Now, I would like to ask Professor Lubchenco, and you are in charge of the fisheries management at the head of the NOAA. And what is the lesson you learned through that position as the head of the NOAA, and in terms of the connecting science and policy for fisheries management? Please share your experiences.
I would say two things were really reinforced. One is the importance of relationships, being able to build and cultivate relationships over time in a way that engenders trust. And so that means listening, not just talking. And so whether it's members of coastal communities and fishermen and scientists and managers, the relationships that are built really matter. And that doesn't just happen overnight. And so cultivating those relationships is important. The other thing that really became obvious to me through the fishery example that I described to you, where we reformed fisheries, was the importance of incentives. And those might be economic incentives, which is partly what was at play in our example, where fishermen wanted to think long-term, but the economics of the way the old fishery management was forced them to fish harder in the short term, because that was the way the business operated. And flipping those incentives from short term to long term was what was transformative. And so paying attention to what are the incentives that are driving a behavior that is destructive is really important, and how to change those incentives. Now, economic incentives are what we usually think of when we hear incentive, but social incentives are as important as economic incentives. And one of the powers of CBOS, or the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy, is the social incentives. I'm a prime minister, let's say, and I enjoy being associated with other prime ministers. They're influencing me, and I'm influencing them. And those social incentives to both work together sometimes outcompete one another, sometimes collaborate with one another. Those social incentives really matter. Many of us are influenced by not just our cultures, but our families, our communities, and the way we think about things. And so changing social behavior is often about changing social incentives. And for companies, it might be being the first mover, or being seen by shareholders as doing the right thing, not just making money, but doing the right thing for the planet. So social incentives are worth thinking about as much as economic incentives. And so if we have a situation that needs changing, what are the perverse incentives that are driving the current action, and how do we change those incentives to align actions with the outcomes that we want? Would be two things I would suggest.
Thank you very much. And Iwe-san, any reflection on the comments from Professor Lubchenco, including the responsibility of Japan as a big fishing nation, please?
Yes, everything's been so inspiring for past few days. I've been talking to each other, and I've been learning a lot. And thank you very much for the comments for today as well. I learned about the social incentives, which is really inspiring. But on the other hand, there's a reality that people need to eat, live. But the situation of the Japanese science, that they're really struggled with the small amount of the shortage of the budget. So I'd like to raise the issue about the budgeting, and especially for the Fisheries Research Agency, that they do need more budget. Please, somebody just give them the budget. For the scientists, it's really important, and even to compare with the JAMSTEC, which is to look after the space. In Japan, not like your agencies, that it's all divided, so that you can see the comparative comparison. That even compared with the JAMSTEC, the Fisheries Research Agency's budget is really tiny. And the other thing is about the structure. The governmental structure, that in Japan is really vertically sectioned. Like the Fisheries Agency, it belongs to the Ministry of Forestry, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. But the Coastal Guard belongs to the Ministry of Transportation. And the JAMSTEC, to research the underwater, belongs to the Ministry of Education. And the river to the brackish water belongs to the Ministry of Environment. So if the Ministry of Environment is invited to talk at some point, some stages, they can talk about to the brackish water, but not under the water. So that is the conflict that, if you're the younger children or younger students, even more that they're questioning why. So this is a question that given to us, the responsible people. So I would like to ask what is the vision for future?
Thank you very much. Yes, the vertical segmentation of the policies is very problematic. Even within Japan, many other countries are the same. But the situation is similar in the global society. The world is now divided into, groups. And now I would like to discuss about the importance of the international collaboration, or multilateralism, in other words, for the sustainability of the ocean economy. So, Professor Lubchenco, the situation, especially under the current White House presidency, the situation seems very difficult and at least not very bright. And what is the situation? And how do you recognize the current situation? And what is your expectation for Japan that in terms of the ocean sustainability? Please share your thought.
I think there's no doubt but that the national government in the United States is failing to be the leader and support science and democratic institutions nationally and internationally to the extent that I believe we should. What we are seeing happening in the US is that because the federal government, the White House in particular, is stepping away, others, and trying to destroy in many instances, others are stepping up. And we are seeing this, for example, in tackling climate change. We are seeing governors and mayors step up to fill the void that is being left by the federal government withdrawing. So there's more aggressive action and more coordination, more collaboration, more strategic action. The same thing can also happen in the international community. Other countries can step forward and fill the void. And I think that in the ocean space, Japan as an ocean nation with a deep culture and history around the ocean has an opportunity to rise to this occasion and really be a more forceful leader, partnering with other like-minded nations to prevent some of the backsliding that is happening. This is not a time for backsliding. It is a time for action. There is too much at risk with climate change, with ocean depletion and disruption, with loss of nature, and we need everyone who has the wherewithal to be actively engaged. So I see an opportunity in the midst of this challenge.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your strong encouragement for us. Now we have about 5 minutes left, so I would like to open the floor. Any questions and comments, please? Please raise your hand, and please identify yourself before asking your questions. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Masanori Kobayashi from Saseka Peace Foundations. I really thank Dr. Lubchenco and others for your inspiring talks. Just a questions to follow up to the Dr. Lubchenco's lectures. I think this internationally, many people are concerned about whether there can be some irreversible changes to be made to the international regime for the ocean, for instance, in the context of the deep sea mining. Because there was a story that the US company may be used as a proxy to allow other companies to do deep sea mining in high sea areas. People are also concerned about some conflicting messages from the White House about Marine National Monument. That was also a landmark achievement under the Dr. Lubchenco's NOAA administrations. And I'm just wondering how we can, like a scientist or other like-minded people, can really resist that kind of movement in order to maintain a healthy and productive international regime for sustainable ocean. I really appreciate your a little bit more elaboration on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you also for many, many years of good partnerships. I have greatly enjoyed working with you personally, as well as our agencies working together. And I think the work that we have done together on behalf of fisheries in the ocean, I'm very proud of that, so thank you. What is happening in the US with respect to ocean policies is potentially very, very problematic. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in honoring agreements that have been made. The U.S. is not a party to the UN Law of the Sea, UN Convention on Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, which governs activities on the seabed, and the International Seabed Authority. So the U.S. is not a party to that. And I think we are hearing rumblings about sort of a rogue nation doing what it wants in the ocean and with respect to deep sea mining and ignoring other countries, other nations. I think that's a very real concern. I don't have any good answers. I believe that deep sea mining should not happen until we know it can be done safely and responsibly. We need more information to know if that's possible, so we don't know yet. And in their interim, I think it is sheer folly to be destroying before we even know what's there and whether we can do it responsibly. The U.S. At the end of the Biden administration, the U.S. had protected about 27% of its exclusive economic zone. And that was highly protected, so very, very good outcomes expected. Many of those are in marine national monuments, as you said. And President Trump has tried to open up some of those monuments to industrial scale fishing. The courts have ruled against him on that. That doesn't mean he won't continue to try. So we will just be watching very carefully to see what happens. I know that these are incredibly rich, bountiful, productive waters that are contributing directly to supplying fisheries on the margins. And the catches outside of these have increased very significantly. We have scientific data that suggests that. So these are valuable resources for both protecting biodiversity and helping fisheries. And it is just sheer folly to destroy those. So I think it's being done in ignorance, but that's typical of a lot of what is happening in the White House now. So at the same time, what happens in the White House is partly influenced by what others in the world are doing. And so again, this is an opportunity for other nations to step up and make their values known in a smart way, but still not just jumping on a bandwagon of destruction, which is not what we need.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 質問は日本語でも結構です。はい、どうぞ。
Thank you very much for your discussion and talk. And I have a question to Honorable Professor Dr. Lubchenco. Today I heard a lot of pessimistic or challenging problems, but there's one great news, bright, nice news, is that the possible fishery catch will be 6 times more than current day. However, I have threatened by many scientists in Japan. Oh, I'm Shintani from the former national hydrographer of Japan and the chair of JEVCO. I was threatened by many of my friends that the fishery catch will be reduced because of the ocean acidification, and total edible fishery resource will be decreased. And under that, if that's true, how can you change it to make it 6 times more? Is there any magic other than a technological development or the proper information, or maybe the banning of the IUUs? If there's any magic you have, could you tell us the magic?
Thank you for that really excellent and insightful question. The opportunity to have good fishery management. So if there has been fishery management that hasn't been effective, that depletes the number of fish that are in the ocean. And if you can have effective management that allows fish stocks to recover, then they become much more abundant. And so there is more potential for seafood if you have good fishery management. It's also true that well-managed fisheries are going to be more resilient in the face of climate change and ocean acidification. And so a really smart strategy for coping with climate change and ocean acidification is good fishery management. So that's point number one of 3 points I want to make. The second point is that the calculation from the scientists that wrote the blue paper called The Future of Food from the Sea that produced the number of we could have 6 times as much seafood was based on most of that growth in terms of new seafood was not from wild capture fisheries, but from aquaculture. So that's a really important point. And most of that was from shellfish aquaculture. So mussels, oysters, clams, shellfish. Point number 3 is that, yes, ocean acidification is very real, it's happening, and it is problematic for both wild capture fisheries and aquaculture. We don't yet know how problematic it's going to be down the road, but we are learning more about it. It's likely that it will affect, or we know that it is affecting some species more than others. So exactly, it was impossible for the scientists that were making that calculation to factor in exactly how much ocean acidification would matter. So that remains a question mark. I think the overall point is that we could have more seafood if we both put in place the policies to have sustainable aquaculture and sustainable fisheries. And that both of those are essential to a vibrant future, regardless of what that actual number is.
Thank you, Jensen. Our time is running out, but before closing, I would like to ask a very short comment or message to the young researchers, or we have students here in this room, so please give them your message.
I love young students. You are the bright lights, the hope, the creative ideas, and I think what is really important for you is to find your passion and to follow it. And for me as a young student, it was discovering the ocean and just being so in awe of the wonders of the ocean, but also wanting to help create the solutions. And it is possible to do both of those. And it is important to learn as much as you can, but also to experience as much as you can. And to be inspired by your mentors, but to spend time in nature, to be refreshed and renewed. Not just with your nose in your book. We need to learn from nature, not just from books and professors. So we need you, we love you, help us, and this is our world that we want to create a better future for all of us.
Thank you very much. This is a perfect, closing remark of today's discussion. Now, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Jane Lubchenco, Dr. Minako Iwe, and Mr. Charles Goddard for sharing your valuable insights and experiences. Thank you once again, and also my appreciation goes to all the participants to today's event, and we look forward to continuing this discussion. And now, I would like to close this panel discussion, and the mic is back to you, Mori-san.
Thank you, Dr. Makino, and all the speakers. Before closing today's seminar, let me give an announcement. The recording of today's seminar will be later uploaded to the YouTube channel of SPF News. Please stay tuned on to our latest information. I conclude today's special seminar. Dear friends and colleagues, please join me in giving a big round of applause. Thank you very much.